Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Men Feel. I am Andy Grant, your happy feeler of men. No, that doesn't sound as good as I meant it.
That came out really
a little unique. Anyway,
I want to rephrase that.
Real Men Feel is all about giving men a space to explore, to feel, to acknowledge whatever's going on for them. We have this weekly podcast called Real Men Feel, which you have discovered. We record live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. We are syndicated to YouTube, SoundCloud, and iTunes. You can subscribe to the podcast easily at realmenfeel.org/iTunes. We welcome your comments, your reviews, your feedback. You can also visit we have a blog at realmenfeel.org. We'll have all sorts of show notes. You can learn about upcoming shows, past shows, lots of awesome stuff. We also have a private Facebook group. We have a public Facebook group. We have a Twitter page you can follow. Lots of good stuff. But mostly this is about a space for you to realize you're not alone with whatever maybe you're going through, to realize there are things you haven't heard of, things you haven't experienced, to give you a little zest for life, some things to look forward to perhaps, some ways to explain some things you've gone through. We normally talk for about 30 or 40 minutes. Yeah. And with me, as always, is my friend and co-host, Alpio Hunter.
Hey, Andy.
It's going to be a wild night.
Yeah, absolutely. With that opening, I mean, we haven't been able to top that.
Well, joining us tonight is someone I'm really excited about having here. When I first created the show at the beginning of this year, I believe it was in February, this is one of the guys that I really thought of for who to be on, why it exists, and a great story to share. Joining us tonight is Brad Little Frog Hudson. Brad is a shamanic healer and teacher, a multi-dimensional energy healer, a best-selling author, and an ordained minister. Brad is also a purveyor of fine meats, and he's a good friend of mine and Apio's. And again, I'm really psyched that you're here. And I realized actually this month, might even be this week, we all met 3 years ago at a Train the Trainer IP event in Boston. And it's been just 3 years, and it seems like it must have been so much longer ago. But
wow, you're right. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, it was 3 years.
Exactly right.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So just proof how much can happen in 3 years.
A lot.
But in the last 3 years, I have seen more people coming out saying they're shamans and shamanism and books and stuff. But before that, I don't even know that I was familiar with the term. So Brad, why don't we just start? Like, what is a shaman? What does that mean?
Yeah, that's a great question, Andy, because as you say, most people don't understand what a shaman really is. Bottom line, a shaman is an individual who works with the spirit world in order to achieve change in our human world. In the old days when we all lived in tribes, the shaman was the individual who was tasked with healing the members of the tribe, both through herbal remedies that he or she would find in the forest and elsewhere, and also through invoking the power of the spirits to come in and heal a person. The shaman was also, say, the food source dried up and the buffalo moved. The shaman was responsible for asking the spirits where they went and then packing up the tribe and moving it, because that was a big deal to have to move an entire tribe. And if he was wrong, he wasn't a shaman very much longer. If there was a drought and there was no food, he was responsible for making it rain, and vice versa. If there was too much rain, he was tasked with making it stop. When a tribe member would die, he was the one who would make sure that that tribe member's soul got to the proper location, whatever it was that the tribe believed in. And he was very well taken care of by the tribe. They would make sure that he had food and clothing and things like that. In today's society, shamans, before I was called to be a shaman, I wasn't really, I didn't know that much about it myself. So it was a path of discovery for me as well.
So it's not like you took a test and you didn't take a test in elementary school that said you should be a shaman. It wasn't like
Yeah, right. It wasn't one of those, yeah, right, where you take the multiple choice thing and they say, you should be a lawyer and you should, dig ditches and all that kind of stuff. No, it wasn't anything like that. I mean, I'm 59 years old. 5 years ago, the summer of 2011, I had a very, very restless summer. I couldn't figure out what was going on, but there was something inside of me that wasn't right. And I kept being led online to the website of a Native American medium in Cape Cod. And I finally bit the bullet and called her and made an appointment. And a 1-hour appointment turned into 3.5 hours. And I walked out of there with a stack of books that she gave me. And she told me I'd be a teacher and a healer. I had no idea what she was talking about because I had, for 30 years, I had been in the concert merchandising business. And, I have a degree in accounting and an MBA. I owned my own company called JSR Merchandising, where we did T-shirts for bands all over the world, including, the Stones and Pink Floyd and AC/DC on down. And I was pretty happy with all of that. But that restless feeling was the awakening inside of me of my spiritual purpose. And I want to be very clear about this, because this was not I didn't become a born-again Christian or anything like that. What happened to me has nothing to do with human religions. What happened to me has everything to do with the spiritual nature of our true selves, I guess you would say. And, the next 6 months, I tried a lot of different things, mediumship classes and tarot cards and everything under the sun, until one day I stumbled across a basic shamanic workshop sponsored by the Foundation for Shamanic Studies in Roe, Mass. And I signed up for that, and within an hour of being in that class, I knew I was home. I still didn't know what a shaman was until the end of the weekend. But I told my instructors at the end of the weekend, thank you for a terrific time, but you didn't teach me anything. What you did was you helped me remember everything. And it turns out that I've been a shaman in many, many lifetimes. And I've taken all the courses, the classes that the foundation has to offer. I did not complete the 3-year class. I dropped out halfway through because it wasn't giving me what I needed. But that's okay, because I now have a very solid path as a teacher and a healer. I did walk away from my business in January of 2014. I owned that business for over 20 years. I sold my shares to my partners and just completely walked away. I didn't even consult my wife, which I don't really advise. I came home from work and she said, "Hi, honey, how was your day?" And I said, "I quit my job." And she kind of freaked out, rightly so. But it was a necessary thing for me to do in order to take the next step on my path, which was helping people. At that point in time, I was doing a lot of physical healing, people with bad backs and people with Lyme disease and other physical long-term chronic problems. And then it transformed into, I was shown by Spirit how to remove addictions from people, how to remove traumas from people, which was especially useful with a lot of my female clients, with the problems that women go through when they're young, and as far as being molested and raped and things like that. And I'm able to help them with that. And then my primary purpose as a shaman is attachment removal from people, places, and things, which essentially is depossession work. And for people that don't understand depossession, just think exorcism. I'm removing negative energies and entities from people, places, and things. I do this all the time. I do 4 to 6 of them a week. And I love the the challenge of really malevolent beings, and it's win-win because I help the human regain his or her life back, and I also help the being because I cross it into the light where it can remember its eternal purpose and its eternal work, and it's win-win, and it's a beautiful thing. Yeah, that's. I hope I answered the question of what is a shaman.
You could just say, I am. But, well, there are lots of things you touched on that I will have to follow up more on. I think one specifically used the phrase that you were shown by spirit. And could you explain that a little? Like, you had a dream, or was it always something different? Like how does spirit show you kind of your next step? How was that?
Yeah, that's another great question. I would imagine it's a little different for everyone. For me, what happens is I've reached a point where if I need information, I reach out in my mind and I just ask, and I will receive an immediate answer. Anytime that you're asking the higher powers for the answer to a question, listen for that very first thing you hear when you finish that question. Like nanoseconds later, you'll hear the answer. Not the answer you hear 3 seconds later, because that's your ego mind, your monkey mind coming in there. But so when I come up against things like my depossession work, where I want to credit Betsy Bergstrom in Seattle for getting me started on that with her compassionate depossession program. But almost right away after I took that, I was shown different ways to do things. And when I say shown, basically I hear a voice in my head that explains the technique to me. And I always try to keep a pen and paper, nearby or in my pocket, because I never know when this stuff's going to come. It's incredible, because the answers to everything are at our fingertips, and we just have to ask. We have so much support here on this planet. The planet Earth. We're every one of us that are here are a part of a tiny subset of souls that are like the Green Berets. We come to Earth to get our butts kicked and learn really fast all of our lessons. So we're the special forces, that 10% of all the souls in existence that say, yes, Sarge, I'll walk point, I'll go point, and come here and literally get our asses kicked. But we learn so freaking fast. And it's a wonderful thing.
Brad,
we can have anything we want.
That you bring up an interesting point, because one of the things that I've heard about shaman is oftentimes they don't choose to be a shaman. They are chosen by spirit, and oftentimes it can be a grueling, especially if you hear about the tribal shaman, the ones that come from the more ancient tradition of shamanism, and how they just go through a really, really challenging time stepping into that particular role and becoming that leader, that teacher, the healer, and all the multiple facets and aspects of being a shaman. Is that something that you experienced as well?
That's a great point, Appio, because what you're talking about is the death of the self and the birth of the shaman. Mm-hmm. In the old tribes, the shaman candidate would go into the mountains or the woods, the forest, by himself or herself until they received a vision. It could be a week, and they're out there with no food, just whatever their water source is, sitting on top of that rock, meditating and asking for the information. For me, I experienced that death on a couple of occasions. One was my very first vision quest, which was in the Green Mountain National Forest in Vermont, run by a guy named Sparrow Hart, who runs vision quests all over the country. And that's 4 days, 4 nights out in the wilderness by yourself with just a sleeping bag and a notebook and water, nothing else. It's a fantastic experience. I highly recommend it. But it also kicks your ass. And, you know, at the end of those 4 days, you've experienced some very, very powerful, I don't want to say just visions, but powerful transformations, I guess, because of the information that you receive from spirit. The other part of my symbolic death was when I left my company, because that was a huge tie to my past. And essentially what spirit told me was I had to make a complete break with my past in order to do this. Fortunately, my wife, while being a little mystified by the process, is very supportive, and she's been wonderful throughout this whole thing. Even to the point of understanding when I say, well, I come home and it's Monday afternoon and I say, tomorrow I have to go to Utah, because I have to go do a vision quest. And she doesn't understand it, but she allows me to do those things. And that's very cool. But yeah, you're talking about that symbolic death. For many people, it's almost truly a near-death experience where they're so ill that they are at death's doorstep. But they come back around, and it's through that experience with death, and holding hands with the Grim Reaper that starts them on their shamanic path.
So is it similar to the language of Alcoholics Anonymous, AA? of someone needing to hit rock bottom for them to open up to something else? Is that kind of on the spiritual sense? You create so much distress or turmoil in your life that you finally are open to something else?
Yeah, except I don't think that the person realizes it when it's happening. It's kind of in the old days of the tribe, yes, that person was sent away from the tribe in order to experience that and discover that. In today's world, I think once a person comes through that experience, they begin, my experience from talking with people is they begin to realize that they can hear voices that other people can't hear. They can see apparitions that other people can't see, and they can heal. And it's incredible that before the show, when you and I, Andy, were talking about the expo we did this past weekend, and I did 44 healings in 2 days at my booth at that expo, and they were short healings, 10 minutes. Yet there was one woman I worked on who is a healer herself that had lower back problems, and she didn't think 10 minutes would do anything. And yet at the end of the 10 minutes, she stood up, she goes, "Oh my God," she goes, "I could feel things in my back moving, and I didn't touch her. I did a shamanic journey, and I was working on her in non-ordinary reality." But many people said the same thing throughout the weekend. I had a gentleman come to me who had a curse put on him by a Haitian voodoo person. And that was my biggest challenge to date. That took me almost 15 minutes to get that out of him. And he had this for a number of years, like 6 years. And he was smiling when I was done. I mean, I could tell immediately that it was gone, and he felt it leave.
So, Brad, you're saying that the biggest challenge you've come across as a shaman took 15 minutes to resolve?
Yeah. That's and you know what? Let me clarify that, okay? Because that's something else I was talking with a lot of people at the expo about, and that is that I've been told by Spirit that I'm charged with bringing shamanism into the 21st century, and that means it doesn't take an hour and a half with your spirits of journey work in order to heal somebody. It's my depossession work takes about 5 minutes, maybe 6 minutes. The traditional sense, it takes hours to do. The healings that I do, if it literally take 5 minutes, and they're every bit as effective as what a traditional shaman would. I don't consider myself a traditional shaman because I'm combining some angel work and some archangels and in with all of that stuff. But it just makes it more powerful. But yeah, you're right. That was the most difficult thing I've done in 5 years, and it was 15 minutes.
You must have done something really serious to have a voodoo priestess piss her off, and so she, puts a curse on him.
Yeah, and my experience has been that these Haitian curses are some of the most difficult things to remove.
They are really nasty.
I've worked with them before. I've even been stumped by them before. There was one in particular I couldn't move, but that was 3 years ago. That wasn't today.
So, just out of curiosity, speaking of traditions and so forth, and obviously there are many, many shamanic paths and many shamanic traditions, depending on which part of the world you're actually from. Was there a particular path that you ended up taking that brought you to the space where you're incorporating other parts, other elements of healing, of spiritual and energy healing?
For me, it was a natural progression, Appio. It was always just seemed to be the right thing to do. I've had, especially this weekend, I had people come up to me and they say, well, what shamanic tradition are you, a part of? And I just look at them and go, my own. I don't know. I mean, I know in other lifetimes I've been a Lakota. I've been a member of many, many tribes, but I do not consider myself a shaman of any particular Native American tradition. It seems that I was told when I got on this path I would be on fast tracked, that I would be on the fast track. They weren't kidding. It's just, I'm so blessed that every time I need something, it comes directly to me. And sometimes I don't even know what that is that I need. When I was working on this Haitian thing on Sunday, halfway through the work, all of a sudden I saw an image in my mind, which was what I needed in order to blast this curse out of this guy. And so it came at the right time. It was just in time. It was, I guess, maybe, just like just in time inventory and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of the way my shamanic practice works. That when I need something, it comes to me. And it comes to me fast and furious.
Have you always had this trust to just jump into whatever's showing up? Or
yes,
really?
Yes, that's okay. That's a great point, because I think that differentiates me from a lot of people. When I was growing up, I was not aware that I had a spiritual part of me, but I always trusted in my instincts. And I always did what I heard deep down inside. In other words, I always went with my heart, not my head. And I never gave a rat's ass what anybody thought about what I was doing. And that in and of itself differentiates me, I think, a lot. It's when I made the transition, there are no role models to look at for changing your life from being, just a guy who was having fun in the rock and roll business, selling T-shirts. I toured with these bands for 12 years. I had my own company for 20 years. It was sex, drugs, and rock and roll as far as I was concerned. And then all of a sudden, the next thing I know, I'm healing people. I'm counseling them. I'm coaching. The people came first. If they didn't have any money, that was fine. I treat them anyway. It's all, it's just what you do as a person. Not even as a man, but just as a person, just helping other people. Yet, I think if most men were approached in the same situation that I went through, they would be a little confused because, again, you don't have that role model. we're not taught to trust in spirit or trust what we hear or feel within ourselves. And that's a huge mistake. But most people spend their whole lives trying to make other people happy. And oh my God, I can't think of anything worse than not being happy myself, but trying to make somebody else happy, even if it is a family member. Family members are wonderful, but they have their own paths as well. And it's very important to be true to yourself. And especially as a man, when you think like thousands of years ago, the whole myths, Greek myths, mythology, Roman myths, all this stuff, there were purposes behind these things. They gave life lessons and showed you how to be a member of society and all these other things. We don't have that today. It's just, you're born, you're thrown into 12 years of school, you're thrown out of that. If you're lucky, you go to 4 years of college, and then it's like, okay, now what the hell do I want to do with the rest of my life?
Mm-hmm.
And that's extremely difficult. And yet there's still, I'm sure some people have stereotypes about shamans, and which maybe thinking that they practice black magic, when they're not helping people, and they can invoke all sorts of nasty spells and things on people, and it's. Yeah, are there black people that do black magic out there? Yeah, there are. I've run into them, and I've had to remove the results of what they've done from people. But they're a small minority. But just that whole transition that I made 5 years ago, I didn't have anybody's hand to hold. I didn't have any path that was already laid out for me. I kind of had to make it all up as I went along. And did I have some bad experiences? Yeah, I had one really bad experience with a modality that I'm not going to name, but totally screwed me up for months and took a lot of money from me. And, but I recovered from that. And it was, in hindsight, it was an essential part of my path. The 2 months that I was just totally screwed and my life, felt like it was just falling apart, was an essential part of my path. I had to go through that in order to become the man that I am today.
So is that transition feel like it's complete, or is it a transition that really doesn't end?
That's it. It doesn't end. It's just like, it's no different than my medicine name, Little Frog. When I got that on my first vision quest, the last morning when I woke up the morning of the 5th day, there was this huge bullfrog about 4 inches from my face when I opened my eyes. And it said to me, well, Little Frog, you made it through the 4 days and 4 nights. Are you now a big frog? And I knew that was a trick question, because I'll never be a big frog. I will always be that little frog learning. There's too much for us to learn. That's why we keep coming to this earth thousands and thousands of times, because we're never going to get it right. Yet that's okay, because the fun is the journey. The fun isn't the destination. The fun is getting from point A to point B, and because we never know what to expect, and we take the good with the bad, because they're all essential elements of what each one of us is here to do. And when we are lucky enough to find our path and embrace it fully, it makes life a billion times better, exponentially better. I'm having the time of my life, and I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Am I as financially secure as I was when I owned my company? No, but who cares? Spirit will take care of that. It's like, I don't do any advertising. I just ask Spirit to bring me people that need me. And when that happens, when I'm in a real happy place and my vibration is very, very high, all of a sudden I have a bazillion clients coming to me. out of the woodwork. And it can be that way for everybody, anyone and everyone. I am nothing special. I am just a person who happens to listen closely to those voices and to my heart. And that's all it takes, And I'd like to also talk about fear for a minute here, because fear is our biggest limiting belief. And if there's a great quote in A Course in Miracles, and I'm going to have to paraphrase, but it says, if you knew who walks beside you on your path on this planet, fear would be impossible. Because each one of us has a group of dedicated guides. Each one of us has a group of dedicated angels. We all have ascended masters working with us. We can call upon the archangels anytime. The archangels anytime we want. We have power animals. We have teachers in human form from the upper shamanic world. And we have star beings and light beings that are with us all the time. So, when I was on my vision quests, I literally had hundreds of beings around me 24/7. And there was no way anything bad would ever happen to me being out there all by myself. But it's the same way sitting here in my house right now. I'm surrounded by beings. They keep me safe. They help me. Now, don't forget, you have to ask for help. Ask for help from your angels. Otherwise, they're just sitting around playing rummy, and Monopoly and bored to tears. But you have to ask for all that help.
Is that kind of why? Is that kind of why, like the saying "bad things happen to good people" is it to get you to ask for something else, for help?
I don't know if it's to get you to ask. I think it's that. To me, the first reaction I get when I hear that phrase is that it means don't worry about the bad stuff that happens to you. Just like the bad stuff that happened to me, when I left my company and I spent 2 months with that one modality, I thought that was the end of the world, when everything came crashing down for me during that. But no, I think that just means that just go with it. That bad things happen to good people. Everything happens perfectly. You need those bad things sometimes to come out of whatever it is that you're in. And we've all talked to people in bad relationships or bad marriages, and it's like, well, why don't you leave? And they don't want to leave what's familiar. They just can't bring themselves to do it. So we're all living in our past, and that is so limiting to us, because we make the same decisions over and over and over again. And again, going back to A Course in Miracles, and I'd like to give all the listeners a quick, a really easy way to get rid of your past, and that is, we all have these little film strips and movies that run through our brain. And they all have to do with blame, shame, anger, guilt, resentment, all these bad things. And the moment one of them starts up in your head, stop it. Say, stop. Send love and forgiveness to everyone involved in that. Send love and forgiveness to yourself. And then say, thank you very much for the lessons, but I don't need you anymore. Goodbye forever. That film strip, that movie will disappear completely from your brain. Mm-hmm. And you won't be able to think about it again. Mm-hmm. And if you it took me 3 months one summer to get rid of all the crap in my head in order to allow me to live in the ever-present now, this ever-present moment, because this is the only thing that counts. What you and I and everybody else did 10 years ago at some party means nothing. It's all about the ever-present moment. Make the decisions based on what's going on right now, this second, and you'll find that it works in a big way.
Beautifully stated. Beautifully stated.
Thank you.
So you mentioned that one of the big challenges for you was that there was no mentor, there was no one to look towards who had done the path that you were on. So if for the guy out there now that's kind of where you were 5 years ago, feeling restless, not sure what's awakening, like what's your best advice to someone that's back at that beginning?
Well, call me. Um, I'll put your mind at ease. Go with it. You know, the best advice is go with it. Because our lives have become so much more difficult in this day and age. And by that I mean, you know, for a married couple with kids, with both parents working, you know, you're getting up at 5:30 in the morning and you're going until 11 o'clock at night, and you feel all this pressure to, you know, you got to pay the mortgage and make the car payments and the tuition payments and all this other stuff. And, you know, it just feels like we're all hamsters on that little wheel. And, you know, we're just running as fast as we can and we're getting nowhere. And it's so in order, and most people don't have a lot of money saved up either. So, you know, if I were to suggest to someone, quit your job, they would go, oh my God, but, you know, I only have enough money for like 3 weeks. What's going to happen? And I would say, just trust in spirit. You know, I would want to give them, though, a little bit of work ahead of time on, you know, the law of attraction and what the three of us did when we first met 3 years ago with Infinite Possibilities with Mike Dooley, and explain to them how you manifest things and how, you know, your thoughts create your reality, and how they need to get a certain set of thoughts, a certain type of thoughts out of their mind completely, in order to move ahead. But, you know, the whole thing about us being here on this planet is to experience love and joy and happiness and forgiveness. But for the most part, we're supposed to live lives of joy and happiness. And when you're working a job that you hate, it's really hard to share joy and happiness with your family and your friends, you know. And you don't want to become that weekend warrior that, you know, just lives for Friday nights so that, you know, he can get hammered and forget about everything. That's not living, you know. That's escapism. So it's the trust, it's losing the fear and gaining that trust in spirit. And, you know, if some people want to call it God or Christ or whatever, call it whatever you want if it works for you, you know. It's the greatest things, the greatest experiences of my life have come out of left field totally unexpectedly. And I think most people, if they sit down and think about it, would agree with that. That, you know, their greatest experiences have been things that just suddenly came up, and maybe they just took off on a whim, spur of the moment, you know, saw that flight for $495 to Tokyo and hopped on it, and, you know, and went from there, and, you know, just showed up in a place where they don't speak English and see what happens.
Do you have any tips for kind of the average person that is feeling fear? Like, is there, you know, is it fly to Tokyo? Is it always something different? Like what?
And then ask Ego Nashmaska.
It's, you got to do something that frightens you, you know, to help you break through.
So it's about action in face of the emotion.
That's a great way of putting it. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. You got to take action, because if you're full of fear and you don't take any action, what happens? You sit there and you're paralyzed. You can't go left because you're too damn scared. You can't go right because you're too damn scared. So what do? You just sit there and do nothing. I think we all know a lot of people that are kind of like that, you know, that are just, they're too scared to just even make a movement. Well, you know what, if I piss off my boss, I'm going to get fired and blah, blah, blah. And it might be the best thing that ever happened to them to get fired. And, you know, spirit may just be waiting for them to make that move to get fired so that they can bring them something totally different that is going to rock their world.
Yeah.
But they'll never know if they don't take that first step.
Because I lived that way for years, and I think it's a common experience for humans, not just men. But you can be in a job or a relationship, you're in something that you're so sick of, you want to leave, but you're also clinging to it because it's all you know. And at least I have this shit that I'm sick of. At least I have that. I can't just throw that away. Right?
You know what? That's the way I was after 12 years of touring. I knew I had to get off the road. I was on the road 11 and a half months a year, different city every single day. Was I having fun? Yeah. But after 12 years, I mean, it just grated on me, because it's great when you're in your 20s, but then when you get in your mid 30s or so, you just don't have that kind of energy. And I wanted to leave in the worst way, yet I was so scared of leaving because that was my safety net. I made great money. I had great health insurance. I had friends all over the world that I would get paid to go visit, essentially as I was on the road. But when I finally quit, I was scared shitless. Yeah. I mean, I started a retail store to sell concert merchandise in, and I was scared, but the store got me excited. So that excitement, that feeling of joy elevated I didn't know this at the time, but it elevated my vibration and made the store very, very successful until about 2 years into it, I just got sick of it. I got fed up with it. I couldn't take retail anymore. I sold, I had 3 stores at the time. I sold them to my managers, and that's when I moved to Boston to start my merchandising company, the factory, which, at our biggest point, we had 110 employees and 60,000 square feet up in Dover, New Hampshire. You got to face the fear, you just gotta do it. And I think if people would rely a little bit less on listening to their friends and their parents and their siblings and just did what they want to do, so many more people would be so much happier on this planet. I didn't do that. When I went to college, I went for an accounting degree, and I hate accounting. I should have gone for music and to an art school, and instead I went to this little Ivy League school and got a degree in accounting, with a bunch of Lacoste shirt, khaki, topsider type people that I did not belong with. And the minute I got out of college in Pennsylvania, I moved to California, and that's when I got in the entertainment business. I didn't let any time waste there. I figured, hey, I did my it was actually 5 years in college. And I did that to make my dad happy, and then I got the hell out of Dodge. He had nothing to say about that. He and I didn't speak for 3 years after that. But yeah, Andy, it's easy for me to sit here and say, face your fear and embrace the trust in spirit. It's so much harder to do that in practice. So much harder. And I understand that. And that's why my first reaction to your question was call me, because I can explain to those people how I did it and what it did for me. I've never been happier in my life than I am right now. I just turned 59. I'm in great health. Spirit tells me I'm going to be around for another 40 years. I got plenty of time to do more healings and depossession work. And I wish everybody could feel the way that I feel. I didn't always feel this way, I mean, the first 50 years were just, there were some rough moments. We all go through rough moments, but I'm here to say that it doesn't have to be that way. And we each have the keys within us to change that. And it can be as easy as just sitting down and saying, what would make me the happiest person in the world? What is it that I want to do more than anything else? And this is why, you see so many people that take their hobbies, and after a period of time, their hobby becomes their profession, because they love it so much and they put so much time and effort, like somebody who works with restoring antique furniture on weekends, that maybe they started it in their basement and then they moved out to rented a garage somewhere, and then they now have enough pieces that they rent a little storefront, and they're still doing it part-time. And then the next thing you know, they go, you know what, I don't need that damn job. I'm just going to do furniture full-time. And they're totally successful because the joy and love that they have of doing what they do raises their vibration to the point where they are attracting to them like a magnet all the people that are looking for the pieces they are restoring. And it's that easy. I did it this summer with my barbecue trailer, where I drove to Missouri, bought a 16-foot trailer that was outfitted as a commercial kitchen. I brought it back to Massachusetts. I have 3 commercial smokers, professional smokers. I rented a spot in a parking lot. I just rented a spot in a parking lot, set up my smokers. And I said, okay, June 2nd, I'm opening. I didn't spend a dime in advertising, and I had a tremendously successful summer. Shut it down in the middle of October. I was able to save up enough money to pay the bills for the next 6 months, and I reopened again on May 1st. So now I've got 6 months to do nothing but spiritual work. And, I'm thrilled with that. I am so happy with that. And everybody else can be just as happy by making just a few little changes.
Cool. So you've mentioned a few times that the best way to get help is to call you. So what's the best way for people to track you down?
Well, thanks. My website is littlefroghealing.com, and I have a lot of information on there. There's some books on there that I wrote. There's a shamanic drumming CD. I do teach shamanic journeying and healing locally here in Westford, Massachusetts. I also have a free tools page on there with a lot of energy tools. And you know what? My cell phone's on there too, and that's 978-590-0186. And I encourage people that need help, call me. And it's I'll take the call, and if I'm not available, leave a message. I'll call you back. But my 100% of my being now is dedicated towards helping my fellow men and women and children to make the most out of their lives and help to guide them, in the right direction, to help provide them the tools that they can use to change their lives the way I've changed my life.
And eat well along the way.
I was going to say, and one of those tools is great barbecue. So
absolutely. I got all 4 food groups, man. Pork ribs, brisket, pulled pork, and pulled chicken.
Yum.
That's all the care.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you, Brad, for joining us this evening. This is and I can vouch for the work you do. In my coaching and my energy work, my work at the Akashic Records, I sometimes come across people that I have no idea what they're facing. I can't figure out heads or tails. They're describing things that just make no sense to my brain. And I say, contact Brad Hudson. And you're like, oh yeah, 10 minutes, they're all set. It's all gone. And I'm like, okay.
We'll clear your shit.
Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing that scares this man away. Whatever darkness, whatever you think you're facing, he's a light bearer for whatever it may be.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be on here with you guys, 2 of my favorite people in the world, and thank you for allowing me to share a little bit of what I've learned, with your listeners.
Beautiful. Thanks again, and you can check out Brad at littlefroghealing.com. And if you make your way to Westford, Mass, you can get some good food if you're around here from May to October.
Bubba's Barbecue.
some soul healing and some stomach filling.
Absolutely. The way of the soul is through the stomach, right?
It truly is. At least for me, it is anyway.
Me too.
Awesome. So thanks everyone for joining us and tuning in. I hope you got some. I know I did. So I'm going to trust, as Brad says, I'm going to trust that everyone got something wonderful out of this, and I'm going to lead that by example. Join us live next Tuesday, November 22nd at 8 p.m. Eastern for another episode of Real Men Feel. And I'm really excited about and fearful about this next episode. Originally, next week's show was going to be called Men versus Women. And we're going to talk about all the hate speech that has happened in the presidential election and after it. But really want to change it, redubbing it Men in Support of Women. It's really about men in support of anyone. And we're really inviting any guy that feels called to come join us live and just offer some support to women, to immigrants, to people from other countries, to people from other religions, people from different colors, to people of different sexualities. And so really it's the In Support Of show is kind of where we want to take it and what we want to offer and bring to everyone next week. So I hope you can join us then. realmenfeel.org/show. We'll get you there next Tuesday. Join us at realmenfeel.org. Check us out on Facebook. Subscribe on iTunes. And thanks again for joining us.
We'll see you later.